Hi, it's your buddy Dave from the Kono 1011 Morning Show. Remembering Bruce Hathaway this week, who passed away last Friday night at the age of 78, kind of like Halley's Comet. Somebody like Bruce Hathaway only happens about every 78 years. Last year, we celebrated both Bruce's birthday and one of his favorite hangouts, Dewey's Tip Top Cafe on Fredericksburg Road. So sit back and relax and enjoy a history lesson of radio from the one, the only, Bruce Hathaway.
Linda Dewey's, third generation Tip Top Cafe owner.
And who's your buddy over here?
Well, he's more than a buddy.
Bruce Hathaway.
And you've got something in common with a Tip Top, Bruce.
We're both the same age. In fact, I'm about 2 or 3 months older than the Tip Top.
Well, Bruce Hathaway, after 78 years, what's your favorite thing on the Dewey's Tip Top Cafe menu?
One of each. Really, and it's hard to decide. But I guess overall, the onion rings, the chicken fried steaks, and the pies.
Tell them exactly where it is.
We are located on Fredericksburg Road, about 2¼ miles in from Crossroads Mall, right next to Jefferson Bank.
What do you think the most fascinating thing is about Bruce Hathaway?
Oh, they can't say that on the air.
That's true. So I'll go with the second.
Okay.
That he's one of the most loved people in this city that I know of. If you're from here, you know Bruce Hathaway. If you just moved here, you might know Bruce Hathaway. He's just a dear friend. He was so good to my daddy. And their storytelling together was priceless up here at this counter, and their cups of coffee together, and that was a wonderful memory for me to have the two of them together here, and Daddy telling Bruce stories and Bruce telling Daddy stories.
That's quite a story behind that came about because the ratings were showing that we were really high in women in the morning. Oh, nice. And that's how they came out there with that.
Oh, I started listening to you when I was a kid.
What?
Well, hi.
Hey, it's Stephan Sellers, famous radio personality and child of Kennedy, Texas.
He's got a nice tan, too.
I do. Just in the neighborhood. Hey, I have to tell you a couple of Tip Top and Bruce Hathaway stories, if I may. In the old days, Fredericksburg Road used to go to Fredericksburg. My granddad lived in my granddad lived up in Brady, and when they would take us kids to go see Granddad, we went on Fredericksburg Road from down in Kennedy. So we'd get up early and we'd hit San Antonio and Fredericksburg Road just in time to have breakfast at the Tip Top. Now, this is like in the mid-1950s, you know, so I also have a history.
Gosh, I was 42 years old in 1950.
Well, no, I was a little baby, but this guy I met at the Rialto Theater in Kennedy, Texas. He used to do these great shows. You have to have him tell you the story of the traveling rock and roll shows he did in the early 60s. And that hit all the movie theaters.
All industry, yeah.
Yep, you start in Kerrville and maybe end up at the coast by
Kingsville or Alice. Those are the two that would usually end up.
Who did he bring with him on these caravans?
Oh, unbelievable. Ray Peterson, Tell Laura I Love Her.
Johnny Burnett.
Johnny Burnett.
The Champs were there.
The Champs. Keith Allison of Lee High School, who became one of Paul Revere and the Raiders. And so I went to one of the shows. I was 11 years old. And I met Bruce, and since that day, he's just been the nicest guy, and he was an inspiration to me
If I remember right, when the trucks and the buses, etc., whatever we were riding in, probably riding on commercial buses, when they pulled up, you came over at your ripe age of 11 and volunteered to help unload.
That's right.
You became a groupie, I guess, or no?
No, it's a roadie.
Roadie, yeah,
Roadie's
roadie.
different. Completely different thing. I was a roadie.
That would have been a female Bruce.
Well,
That's right.
is that? Well, no wonder I haven't had any fun on the road.
And so, but he always encouraged me as I would see him. Later on, he would come down. You know, I remember you were at the Rialto Theater in Kennedy for the premiere of the Beatles movie for Hard Day's Night.
Hard Day's Night, yeah.
And I remember Bruce being there, and he remembered me, and he would talk to me and encourage me to get into radio so I could have a life
That's
of hardship.
taking revenge on me right now.
Yeah, so I could have a life of hardship and poverty.
That's right. misery likes company.
Yeah, so thanks for that.
Well, a side note to that, though, that not only did a young fellow by the name of Steve Sellers, at the ripe age of 11, show up there, but just just behind the Ralphs, over about 1 block, lived a guy by the name of Roy Orbison.
That's right.
And this was his early days, I think, and Steve can help me on this. I can't remember when he had already recorded Only the Lonely, which was the one that really put him on the radar. I know he did.
Here's the way I remember it. I heard Candyman on the radio, on KTSA, which was a departure from Roy's operatic beautiful style. It was a very bluesy, gut bucket record. I loved that record. And so I was in the 6th grade one day, and there was a new kid in school, and he had blonde hair and big glasses, and somebody said, "That's Sammy Orbison." I went, "What are you talking about?" "You know Roy Orbison's brother?
Yeah,
Roy Orbison who lives here?" And I went, "What are you talking about?" And so Sammy was a couple of grades ahead of me, and they lived right across from the hospital and kind of behind the Rialto Theater. And his
house is still there, I think.
Yep. And his dad, Orby, worked the oil fields, and that's how the Orbisons came to Texas. Sammy went to school with us for a year. He was very quiet, very nice. And they said that Roy would come into my dad's drugstore sometimes. And
I'm sure he did. Your dad had that was the center point of the downtown area was the drugstore there. Right?
People would come in, drink coffee, talk to my dad. He would dispense wisdom. And I got to meet all the movers and shakers in the community there. But when KTSA came to town, that was a really big deal.
If I remember right, Kennedy was the 2nd stop on the tour. We started in Kerrville the night before. Come on into San Antonio, spend the night up on the road to hit Kennedy for a 12 o'clock show. Sometime I remember we would do midnight shows. We'd do the route in reverse, because midnight shows were kind of a big thing to do. You would either do a stage show before the midnight showing or afterwards, depending on how we got routed into the theater. And the funny part about it was that very few people know the story. How I shouldn't tell this, so long go to jail. The theaters always had the people that deliver the film, the big cans of film. They always leave at every theater a spare film in case something should happen and the feature of the day doesn't get delivered. You've got something you can show. Usually it was High School Confidential or Marilyn Monroe meets the Green Monster or something like that. You know, it's just off the cuff stuff. But in order to get around, you know, being over expensive, that's what we used for our midnight movies, those spare films. And that was a lot of fun. I'm sure Hall Industries, you know, did pay the royalties.
And the shows were about an hour. You do like what, about an hour, and then get out of town, right?
Yeah, we would. Yeah, we had it down to about 20 minutes to load and unload, and about an hour on stage. Except when Denny Ezra was appearing, we'd always have something would happen that would keep us detained for a while, like an argument with somebody in the audience. That was really funny.
But those were big deals. But let me tell you something about Bruce Hathaway. Bruce did radio in the days when you were expected to do a show every day. You did a show. You had to be entertaining. And if you worked for Gordon McLendon, like Bruce did, you had better have a good show and funny show and entertaining show. Every day you did a show, you know, and you'd think of something like the Bob Hope Show or the Red Skelton Show on TV at the time. Well, they did a show a week and had a staff of writers. Well, you know, these guys like Bruce.
You can't compare us to Red Skelton and Bob Hope and everything. Even with a staff of writers.
I just did. So anyway, and you know, they would do these amazing shows on the radio one summer. I loved the summer when you all had the poolside sound effects under you the whole time you did the show. And we were out there in Radio Land going, how cool. If you were a disc jockey, you could do your show by a swimming pool every day. And that was great.
That was at the time. Gordon McLendon, probably the FCC, wrote half the laws of contest and radio broadcast for him. Because the pool sounded so real, including that, and this was all on tape, running tape, but it would change out each day so it wouldn't sound like the same. Like they'd have a lifeguard, hey, no running, blowing the whistle, everything. A little girl would come up, flirt with the lifeguard, you kind of hear her off. And it was so good. We were at 1130 Broadway, upstairs, over a car dealership, had these big iron steps you had to go up. And the people would get on the bus and ride over there in their bathing suit with their little rubber ducks hanging on their inner tubes, and would be just incensed when they get up there to find out there was no real swimming pool.
Those were the days.
We had to start telling at the very beginning of the show, this is a recreation, you know, stay at home.
I remember the time Ricky Ware broke the stay awake record. Stay awake and on the air for 300 and something hours. My mom had taken me to Fredericksburg to pick up a puppy. We had bought a border collie puppy from someone in Fredericksburg, and we were coming back into town. We were listening to KTSA. We were coming back through San Antonio, and Ricky Ware's on the air, staying awake for 300 hours in a storefront window. Do you remember the store? Was
Brooks Shoes.
Brooks Shoes, and I told my mom, I gotta go. And so she, this is crazy, I'm like 12 years old, and she let me off on, I guess it was Houston Street or something, and drove around the block a couple of times while I looked at Ricky, you know, and he was in there doing a show and looked really sleepy.
Well, he did. He did Lime about a 45-minute break every day, which usually occurred after the crowds died down, like late in the evening, and we'd take him across the street to the Gunner Hotel and put him in an ice bath to get him revived. We had doctors who would be there to make sure he didn't get hypothermia or anything, but there for a while it was a struggle to keep him awake. And then you reach a point where you don't want to sleep. It's kind of a,
I think
you're really goofy, you know, you don't know what you're saying.
I think the Big Bopper had that record in Beaumont before Ricky broke the record. I believe it was the Big Bopper. But
Yeah.
Another time that was great for listening on the radio when you're out in the hinterlands is they start shooting the Alamo out at, you know where the other Alamo is at Bracketville? Like the tourist say, you know there's another Alamo, it's a little Alamo. It's out at Bracketville. Well, KTSA was so involved in that, and you would get these updates from Bruce and Ricky on how the film was going and where you know, Chill Wills and John Wayne were having dinner at Big John Steakhouse on Austin Highway, and it was, I never heard anything like it. It was the whole station was involved in that movie.
Gordon McClendon, of course, at one time owned Columbia Pictures for a good while, even though I don't think Columbia was involved with making this, but he definitely had the Hollywood connection. And so he catered to just about any of the stars or anything that was happening that way. And he associated himself very heavily with John Wayne because he ran for senator later. And John Wayne came down here and did a support ad for him against Ralph Yarbrough. Unfortunately, Gordon didn't win the contest, but it was quite an era for me being among all of this. And Don Keyes and Gordon McClendon, not only did they have Columbia, but they did just about all the trailers, the preview trailers, for all the motion pictures that were coming. The big ones, like, I never forget, Gordon had this deep voice, he'd say, "The guns of Navarone," you know, they have boom, 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 boom going off in the background. And Don Keyes and him would put this together, matching up the pictures that were going to be shown for the previews, and did bunches of them. Then he got the fever at this ranch in Dallas, El Cielo, and he opened up a movie soundstage there. Because the ranch was big enough where it had like every different type of geographic location. There was a lake there, there's also like an arid desert area, there's woods, so he could film just about anything he needed. He created a thing called two great B movies that several big stars came out of later, called The Killer Shrews and The Giant Gila Monsters. And
two classics.
Yeah, the Killer Shrews were a couple of Doberman Pinscher dogs with masks on, and they were good, because they could show those teeth real well.
One Alamo story is Ricky got a part. Did you have a part in the movie?
No, I didn't.
Ricky had a part in the movie, and he was a sentry at Sam Houston's camp. And at one point in the movie, Frankie Avalon rides up. Frankie Avalon has a skunk hat on, and Frankie Avalon rides up, and Ricky says, "Hold up there, bud. You're in dangerous territory." And he says, "I'm looking for Sam Houston." And so I used to tell a joke about Ricky. I used to say they had to do a bunch of takes because Frankie Avalon would ride up, and I'd say, and Ricky Ware would go, "Hey, it's Frankie Avalon on a horse."
Where's the net Funicello?
Yeah, but that's not true. But they ran this when the movie came out. They ran this promo on KTSA with this bombastic music in a big voice that said, "Ricky Ware appears in the movie The Alamo. If you look down to take a bite of your popcorn, you probably missed Ricky Ware."
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
I do, but what does that have to do with the Tip Top Cafe?
Linda, what do you think of these two characters?
Oh, I'm loving the stories. I know so many of his.
Well, even like at 9/11, which is sort of not a day of celebration, of course, it's a day of remembrance. The Tip Top goes out and serves chicken fried steak and onion rings and the whole schmear to the different fire departments around here. Now, of course, they got 3 shifts. The shifts that are on duty at the time at lunch of that day, they give them a gift certificate to come in at their own convenience. The chief hands them out later. And that's something about just to say thank you for being the rescue people that you are and taking care of our city and just remembering the things that our firemen do all over the nation.
Well, Linda, we want to thank your family for taking care of our families for 78 years.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor and a lot of pressure.
And a lot of work, too. This guy, Mr. Bruce Hathaway, he's celebrating 78 years on the planet also, as well as Dewey's Tip Top Cafe. What's your website?
Dewey'sTipTopCafe.com.
Thank you, Linda, for taking care of our families.
Thank you. Mwah. Mwah.